This is Sengwe. I am the collaboration coordinator at Code for All Network, and I want to welcome you all to our first webinar of 2023, and actually our fifth webinar of this series for our Civic Tech and SDGs webinars. And the series is all about how Civic Tech and the UN Sustainable Development Goals are related. And sorry, I lost my screen. All right. So this series is all about how Civic Tech and the UN Sustainable Development Goals are related and how Civic Tech can be used to address and help us come closer to reaching these goals. And today we are celebrating International Education Day, yay! And we'll be hearing from experts in the world, from around the world actually, who are in the field, and they're going to be sharing their insights and experiences on how technology is being used to improve access to education and how it can be used to empower communities to, take an active role in achieving sustainable development. So yeah, we look forward to an engaging and informative discussion. Thank you for joining us. I don't know how many people we have yet, but to everyone who's around, thank you. So yeah, if you're not familiar with what we do or who we are, you can find links in the chat. Mai is going to share some links. But in a nutshell, Code for All is a global network composed of civic tech organizations from around the world. And our mission is to connect these organizations so that they can learn from each other so that we have better impact at local levels. So yeah, if you're new to Civic Tech or the SDGs, or you're a fan of both, or you're just curious about how these two things come together, you're in the right place. But first, before I hand it over to the experts, we have a few housekeeping rules. We'll start the session with hearing from each speaker. We have 5, but at the moment we have 3. 2 more might join us just soon. And we will follow this with some questions that have been submitted by our audience via Twitter and Instagram. And if you'd like to ask questions during the webinar, of course, you can share them via the chat or via the YouTube chat where we are live streaming. And a recorded version of this will be on our website, codeforall.org, and on our YouTube where you're watching, of course. Okay, so now let's get into it. Like I said, this is our 5th session of the series, which we're very excited about, and our first webinar of the year. So hopefully we're doing great. So we have 5 speakers lined up for today. We have Antigona Uka, Executive Director at Kosovo Center for Distance Education, Carol Sanchez, NGO Relations Manager at Tech to the Rescue, Julia Diaz, right there on your screen. No, that's Sarah Nia. She was right there. She disappeared from my screen. Julia Diaz, Digital Innovation Consultant at Inter-American Development Bank. Sarah Nia, who's on my screen now, Partnerships and Community Lead at Citizen OS. And lastly, Ufa Modei, co-founder and global lead at Digital Grassroots. So now I think that was enough of me. That was a lot of introduction. We're going to get into it. And first, we're going to start with Antigona. Over to you, Antigona.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be part of this group, which is probably locally rooted, but globally informed. And I think that's what Code for All also stands. As you said, I'm the head of Kosovo Center for Distance Education. Distance education nowadays is digital education because it has different generation of, as a theory, it involves different generation depending on the technology and the revolution of technology throughout the time. As a center here in Kosovo, we are highly involved in bringing about digital solutions to education to involve as many children as possible in the digital environment in itself. However, I would like, if now I can use my time, I would like to say that even according to the UN, digital right today is recognized as a civil right. And therefore, as a center, or probably most of our education organizations now are trying to promote it among us education systems around the world. However, coming from the place where we serve as a center, there are plenty of issues that are kind of being barriers to bring about digital solutions that involve everyone. Some of them including digital divide, and which comes to technological infrastructure. But not only that, there's also legal infrastructure that involves digital education implementation within the country. So these are some of the issues that we believe should be addressed in its roots. And as NGOs and grassroots organizations, we have to heavily work on that. One of the solutions that we brought during pandemic was a tracking system, which is a digital solution to track where are those children across the nation, where they're located, that they can't take any lesson in an online environment because they didn't have a digital device. So the tracking system was all digitally, but also we measured an issue which was related to technology. So because around 4% of children did not have any asset, laptop, computer, desktop, or anything, they couldn't attend their classes, and therefore these are recognized as a dropouts during a certain period of time, in this case during pandemic. I'm going to mention just few issues that relate to digital right as a civil right, because this actually is the right to have access to online or digital environment, being it educational, or recreational, or cultural. But there are issues that we have to tackle, being listed as digital divide, lack of digital competence, technological legal infrastructure, and digital wellness. If I can talk a bit about the digital divide, I would say that this is not only in our country an issue, but it is a worldwide issue that has to be tackled in order to further progress in accelerating access to more digital inclusion and have civic technology and open data bring about quality education. According to the digital competence, I would say as a center, we heavily invest ourselves in developing both students' competencies in a digital environment, but also teacher professional development, because we believe that someday, not in the very not in a distant future, we should have even virtual classes offered to our kids, because the world is progressing in the direction, and we know that there are virtual schools around the world that have been working for more than 2-3 decades now, and therefore none should be left behind. Other issue, as I said, is legal infrastructure, because we work in a public education system. It's very important to have online laws in place, online education laws in place, which regulate, and also standards for digital education and courses and material that are provided in a digital format. And as such, these standards and administrative instructions and laws should be tackled by the government. But of course, NGOs should be watchdogs, and also have a role in pushing forward the implementation of strategies that countries are undertaking. Especially in our case, Kosovo has built the Ministry of Education has built a strategy for digital education. Now, as a civil society in this matter, we have to push it forward to get implemented and not let it just a policy as a draft. And the last but not least is digital wellness. We do understand that as we transit to a more digital environment, we need to make sure that our education stakeholders, as I said, are properly equipped with skills, and this allows them to use technology. Otherwise, this may create stress and burden to traditional education system on its own. So if we can imagine a scenario where our teachers have no clue how to use technology and students have no idea what's being provided to them, but then we have, in this scenario, schools being equipped with technology, that just creates stress. And that's against the digital wellness that we are talking about. So these are the four main issues that we as a center also are heavily involved, and we want to provide our own expertise within, of course, it's state rooted, and we develop also research on which we recommend and suggest the government where they should intervene first and foremost, so we can create this inclusive approach within the country. Just to give some targets as we go forward, for this year we have a target to train approximately 200 teachers in the next 6 months. Actually, around 100 young people will be trained in digital media literacy. We're working to set foundation for Kosovo's virtual school, which will serve public education system. I'm talking about pre-university education mainly here. We do invest ourselves in research and development as well. So we understand, throughout this work, we understand where we should first intervene, and advocacy towards bringing about loss of online learning. It's very important to have a multi-stakeholder collaboration that sets the work in motion and brings a faster pace to allow more holistic progress towards achieving the sustainable goal number 4. How we do that is by bringing on the table multi-stakeholders, including government, non-governmental, donor, business partners, and NGOs, to build first and foremost trust and efforts towards a common goal. I'm not sure if I'm taking more than the time I have available, but Melissa, if there's any time I should stop, please let me know.
Yeah, how much left?
Actually, I mentioned most of the things that are very important. I just can add that we want to develop agents for digital learning in Kosovo and lead together with these agents. And these mainly come from the education stakeholders, including teachers, because most of the time when we talk about technology and digital transformation, we have, I think, the most focus on technology experts, but I think we need educational technologists that are a part of this way or path. So yeah, this is all I have. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Antigona. And next up, we have Carol from Tech to the Rescue, which is quite an awesome name, I must say. Take it away, Carol.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm Carol from Colombia, and I'd like to start by telling a little story that recently came across to me by my father, and he's an IT engineer. So when I was growing up, I always thought oh, he's quite smart and he knows everything about technology. And he knows very well how to use a computer. But recently, 2 days ago, he told me that when he was studying his IT career, he didn't have a computer because we just didn't have access to computers in Colombia by that moment, and it was quite expensive. And it just opened my mind about how, of course, it's possible to learn and to grasp information for us now without technology, but no one will consider studying IT in this moment without a computer. And sadly, that is the reality of many children and many young students, not only in Colombia, but in many places. And in Tech to the Rescue, even when we don't work with hardware, like giving computers to children or to students, we do focus a lot and we do have a strong desire to help using software unlock resources that can help children and adolescents and young students to unlock their potential as well. So I have a small presentation that I want to share, showing some of our case studies and answering the questions we have. So I'm showing now. So just to briefly explain what is Tech to the Rescue, I don't know if I can make this bigger. Oh no, I'm gonna leave it like this. We are a matching platform, and what we do is matching NGOs, nonprofits, with the companies that can deliver tech solutions on a pro bono basis. So apps, websites, cybersecurity systems, blockchain, everything that you can think about when you think about software and platforms, we can help nonprofits get. We started in 2020, precisely during the COVID pandemic, because we realized that the civil tech society actually has a lot of resources that can help nonprofits to scale their activities and to reach more people. So our goal is that a nonprofit can help today 10,000 children access education with technology. They can unlock their potential and help 100,000. So that's our goal. And from the side of the tech companies and the tech industry, our main goal is to set a standard for them to get involved in pro bono projects at least once per year. So think about legal offices and like lawyers. They do have a system where yearly they have some budget allocated to pro bono services. We want to help create the same for the companies so we can maximize the potential not only of nonprofit but also of local governments, especially in topics as education and health and humanitarian response, so they could achieve and reach more people. As for the questions, this first question actually I think is so related to our goal, because that's our main mission. Like, we believe that the civic tech, and especially open data, can help many people to access a more peaceful world. So we saw it in our recent campaign that was Tech for Ukraine, where we focus especially on organizations working in the response in Ukraine, not only inside the country, but also outside, receiving refugees, receiving children coming, creating education systems for them, but also shelter programs, food programs, everything. And we realized that the civic tech world has a lot of resources to give. They just don't know how. And sometimes also one of the issues is that the organizations and even sometimes the government don't know how to receive them, or they just don't know what they can do with this. So this brings me to the third question, that is, what do we need to scale our activities? And I do think that we could also benefit from some education to education NGOs and local agencies. And it's a tech education. And it's not in the sense that we need to teach them what they have to do, because they already know. And I do believe local organizations know how to respond, and they know what they need to do to provide better education or better education systems, but they don't know sometimes how to involve technology in these processes. They don't know that actually technology can make the process faster or even cheaper. That is also something that we want to focus, or just less time consuming. So if I can think about something that can help us, is just having like an education program for these NGOs responding, so they can just like also open their minds to what technology can do for them. And in that sense, help more people and reach more children or students, or just like general beneficiaries, if we can use that word. Related to the second question, that is the targets we have for the projects. As Tech to Rescue, we work with any kind of organization. So we receive health organizations, education as well, humanitarian development, every organization, because we're also working with the SDGs. So everything that tries to respond to one of the world's most pressing problems, we're receiving. And what I have seen is that sometimes, or in many cases, organizations working in health, they see that it's not enough to respond directly with health services, but they also need to educate the people they are reaching out to. So I do see that education is a cross-cutting topic, not only in the sense of like educating people in the schools or about certain like the traditional topics, maths, literature, not in the sense, but educating people in every aspect of their life. So how to better take care of your health, how to even plan your finances, how to receive or seek for help, that is also important. And people also can be educated in this sense. A refugee, for example, coming from Ukraine to Poland, needs to get information and in some ways being educated on how to receive and seek for the help they need. So I remember, for example, one of our first projects in Text Rescue was with the Education Minister of Poland, and they created a chatbot to for Ukrainian refugees to learn how to get the help in Poland. And the last, how can collaboration across multi-stakeholders design a way forward? To accelerate this, I believe it's the only way, to be honest. And I do believe that organizations need to work closely with the local governments to address this issue and create like one strategy or one big strategy to respond to these issues. And in this sense, technology takes a huge part in this, because as I said before, they can accelerate this process. They can do it without it, maybe, I believe, but also it can be slower, and as we've seen so far, it can also left behind some targets as children with special needs, for example. So I've seen now that with technology, these kind of target groups can access better ways of learning, of just like reading or understanding some new things that are open now because of technology. So just to give you some examples of some of the projects we've worked on.
Just giving you 2 minutes to finish so that we can move to others. Thanks.
Don't worry. Super fast, I will go through this. And I will want to start actually for the last one. That is an stories app for improving children's reading in Armenia. This is a super interesting project because they want to create an app that is not only going to help students to learn to read or like overcome their issues learning how to read, but also they strive for helping and teachers. So they want to reduce the time teachers spend in unpaid work giving lessons to children. So I think that this is amazing because sometimes we focus too much on students, that of course is the main target, but we forget about who is giving these services. And in this case, it's teachers. So this is a super impactful project in my belief. And then we have a matching platform for Ukrainian refugees who are coming to Germany, I believe, and they were giving them local buddies that can guide them through the process. And sometimes they were finding through this platform language courses, someone who was going to teach them English, German, other kind of languages, so they could integrate better in society. And the last one is a website development to help the street children get access to education. And this was a project in Nigeria. You can read more about our projects in textrescue.org. And I'm going to finish now, so we can move forward. But this was it. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Thanks. And I won't waste any time. We will move on to Julia.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And thank you so much, Cultural, for inviting us to talk a little bit more about quality education. So I'm just going to share a quick presentation, and I swear it's going to be very quick. So we can start the discussion section. So let me know if you can see my screen. Okay.
Yes, we can see it.
So what I wanted to present today is a tool that can help everyone working to improve the quality of education to achieve that, being the civic sector, being governments, being startup, private sector, whoever you are. I think this too can help you, which is Code for Development. Code for Development is a platform for open source software. It's an initiative from the Inter-American Development Bank, which was the first multilateral to actually create a platform for open source solutions focused on public managers in Latin America and the Caribbean. So before we start, I just want to quick recap what is open source software. It's a software that has its source code open. It's kept open. It's free to download. You can modify, you can incorporate it into other projects. and you can help, you can actually help to improve the software within your specific need. And why this is so important, I think when you talk about the role of civic tech, which was one of the questions that Code for All asked us to answer, I think open source is a big accelerator of development efforts. I think it brings equity to accessing the latest innovative technologies, which are around the world, especially for countries that don't have the same tools to make it happen. It fosters innovations, it accelerates improvement of those tools that are open, it fosters collaboration. And you can see, I'm not showing here, but GitHub, for example, has a huge report that when COVID happened, it sparked so much the collaboration on open source projects because everyone was just finding ways to help. And I think helping open source tools to improve it, it's a huge way to make it happen. And I think when we're talking about education, one of the main things that we have to focus is transparency and accountability. So I think open source is a huge tool for this as well. What are we, especially when we're inserting new technologies in education, what are we actually doing? I think transparency and accountability is a big part of the equation here. And a little bit of the Inter-American Development Bank history with open source software. So we created cultural development in 2017 because the IDB was actually developing a lot of digital solutions for our clients, which are governments from Latin America and the Caribbean. And we've always seen them as public goods. So we just needed a channel to make sure any government had access to everything that we were building for specific clients. And then I think it became a one-stop shop for a lot of public managers that wanted to know what open source tools were out there and that could help them. So we started to add tools that open source tools that were developed by startups, NGOs, but were focused on development and could really help them achieve and solve any issues that they wanted to. And in the last couple of years, we also started to help governments to share the codes that they were developing in-house. So this is a huge thing. I think governments already has the culture to share, but they do it very informally. So we're helping them to do that in a more scalable way with anything that they need, any support that they need to open, add an open source license, add the necessary documentation so it's actually reusable. So that's where we are right now. And I always like to share this quote from Dinora. She's the Secretary of Innovation and Civic Participation of a city in Monterrey, Mexico, which is, we don't have to duplicate efforts when we're working with public sector and education. Let's focus on scaling what's out there and not reinventing the wheel. So I think this is it. I think it's a little bit of the soul of open source here. She portrayed it very well. So for us, what is important when talking about open source as a public good? It has to be accessible, so people need to be able to find it. It has to be reusable, which means it has to be it has to have the proper documentation. People need to understand the step-by-step that they need to do to implement where they are. I think a lot of people confuse open source with free. Open source is not free because you still need the skills and the resources to implement it where you are. And I think developers that are sharing open source tools have a little bit of responsibility to make it as easy as possible for anyone that is trying to use it. And it has to be shareable. So don't forget to add a open source license so people are actually able to use it. And I just want to give some examples, because when we talk about quality education, it means the role, right? So we have a little bit of management. Managing a school is really hard. So this, for example, Educar was, it is a tool that was developed by the government of Brazil. And it's now maintained by a startup in Brazil, but it's free, it's open source. And it's focused on improving the management of municipal schools in centralizing the information, improving, resources. So this is a huge part of increasing quality of education anywhere. We have also Matrícula Digital. Matrícula Digital helps governments to centralize the assignment of students in different schools, which is really important to increasing transparency, increasing equity and efficient when we're talking about, enrolling your kid in a school, making it centralized and it's essential. And this too was implemented in several countries in Latin America. And then you have, for example, XQXR, which is a digital public good. Actually, it was funded by I think UNICEF as well. And it's a tool to help children and adolescents learn how to program in virtual and augmented reality. So this is digital skills is a huge important part of education right now. We know about all digital transformations happening in the private and public sectors. So how do we teach kids how to program? And I think having open source tools are so important for that. And then lastly, we have Urban By. Urban By is actually a urban development tool, but it gathers data from different sources to kind of program the workflow of geographic boundaries, estimate population, locate places of interest, and even calculate travel time. So when these places of interest are schools and you're trying to plan where to build new schools or where to increase schools, this becomes an education too. So again, we go back to a little bit of management and planning, but just to give you, 4 examples of the infinite possibilities of open sources that we have to help improve education anywhere. And just to finish before I pass you to my other colleagues who are also going to present and we open for discussions, this is a little bit about how Code for Development can support you. So we have currently 142, to be exact, open source tools in the platform. And if you're interested in reusing the tools, which is not only for education, we work with several sectors at the development intersection. We're happy to help you. We sometimes offer technical support on one-on-one. It depends on case-by-case situation. We also connect people that are interested in using the tools with the developers that created them or developers that already reuse them for mentorship. And we have a few implementation partners as well when we're talking about government. It takes a village to raise a child. I think this proverb it's very helpful in the open source ecosystem as well. So we're not only talking about creating open source tools, but we're also talking about maintaining open source tools, improving open source tools, and helping governments and civic organizations to implement those open source tools. So we're just trying to connect all these players and make sure that the tools are actually reusable, and we increase the adoption of open source tools in the region. And the second way that we can support is that, last thing I'm gonna say here is that we have a network of developers and public managers that are interested in using open source tools. It's called Code for Dev. We have more than 2,000 developers in Latin America and the Caribbean. And we organize showcases, we organize implementation workshops, we have Slack channels with all the developers. We focus on skills building. So if you're interested, you can just scan the QR code, and it will take you to our platform and to the page specific where you can register to the network. So that's all I wanted to share with you, because I know we have little time. So I'm gonna pass back to Melissa and wait for the discussion.
Thanks. And I'm just going to quickly pass it on to Sarah from Citizen OS.
All right. Thank you, Mar and Melissa, for having me today. And thank you to the previous speakers for your inspiring presentations about a very important sustainable development goal, which is inclusive and equitable quality education. So I'm here on behalf of Citizen OS, a registered nonprofit headquartered in Estonia, but now proud to have opened up a chapter in Indonesia as well. And we also operate worldwide, and we do two things. We have a free web application that's app.citizenos.com. I dropped the link in the chat. And in the last 2 years, our focus has been on international education projects which aim at strengthening democracy and civil society. So Citizen OS has its roots, actually goes all the way back to 2013 at the Let's Do It table. And Citizen OS emerged in response to two very pressing problems that we saw that were seen in our society. One is that not everyone has the opportunity to express their opinion or the forum to express their opinion. And the second is that even when people have the opportunity to express their opinions, those discussions are not always respectful or meaningful. So with that in mind, we set up our web application, which has a number of features for enhancing collaboration between citizens, such as topic creation, argumentation, voting, private and public groups. And we also set up a feature to enable discussions on important public topics and public groups most recently. Coming to our educational programs, we aim to empower citizens via discussions and deliberations around democracy and open society principles. We aim to facilitate participatory practices, such as running a fictional organization. We also aim to train activists in the design and delivery of civic engagement projects, which address one or more problems in society. Coming to the panel questions, I'm going to begin with question 1, which is, what is the role of civic tech and open data in providing quality education and equal access for all to create a peaceful and prosperous world? In my opinion, civic technology and open data allows for the possibility of transforming the boundaries of information sharing, because until recently we had information flowing in a very unidirectional way, which was from government to citizens. But thanks to civic technology and also in part open data, the flow is changing. So now citizens are pressing government, and citizens are also sharing information with other citizens. Additionally, and this is the best example, what we're doing here, information is no longer bounded by geography, and it's not restricted to department silos anymore. So we have the possibility to access and share information with one another in a theoretically limitless manner. Additionally, it's not only information which is being transformed, it's also communication, because I think, and some of this will resonate with a lot of us who have been in public discussions before, that oftentimes it's the loudest voice or the most powerful or influential person in the room whose argument tends to end up winning. But again, thanks to civic technology and open data, that is not the case. Every citizen can make their voice heard. Every citizen can insist on being treated respectfully, and every citizen can say that they want to be treated as a meaningful contributor to every discussion. Let me come to question number 2. What are the targets that we have for our current projects that address the SDG goal number 4? So our targets for our platform and educational programs are to provide a space that is accessible, inclusive, and conducive to sharing knowledge and best practices surrounding democracy. To go to our web application, that means we want to increase the number of meaningful discussions, votes, active users, and groups, and also to enhance our focus on creating relevant public topics and groups. For our educational program, our main program this year is our Democracy Defenders Accelerator, and the really broad aim is to meaningfully support and engage activists around the globe. Finally, we want both our web application and our educational programs to link up with users and program alumni coming together to join a wider network of knowledge sharing and transfer of best practices. Question number 3, what do you need to scale your current projects and make a greater impact towards goal number 4? I have a very simple answer for this one, and my answer is, at Citizen OS, we really need more users to come forward and to nudge us regarding our needs, their needs and desires and specific use cases, because it's information from our users that will help us to make our platform more accessible, inclusive, and open. Finally, coming to question number 4, how can collaboration across multi-stakeholder groups design a way forward to accelerate progress towards goal number 4? I think if multiple activists like all of us and our larger networks were to come together to demand change, then we'd be very powerful. And more importantly, if we could collaborate in a meaningful and respective way, then it wouldn't be so easy for the people on top to ignore our demands. And additionally, the more knowledge and support that we in the activist and NGO area have, the more we can work on causes and the more we can push for social change. So thank you very much. And I look forward to hearing from the next speaker as well.
Thanks. And next up, we have Ufa from Digital Grassroots. Welcome, Ufa. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly.
Hi, yes, you are. Hi, everyone. My name is Ufa. I am the co-founder of Digital Grassroots and the global lead. I am from Nigeria, but I'm currently based in Newcastle, UK. Digital Grassroots is a non-profit organization registered here in the UK that is focused on digital inclusion for young people with regards to internet governance and digital rights, especially young people from underrepresented regions. Most of our operations are in the African region and in the Latin American region, but predominantly in the African region. So basically, to respond to the first question, the role of civic tech and open data in providing quality education and equal access, I would like to start with saying that that is, to a large extent, the work that we do in Digital Grassroots. We discovered a big problem. Everyone is using social media, everyone is putting out new and amazing technologies to everybody. Globalization is happening so fast, but there is not enough training that is going into ensuring that people know how to use this technology safely. apart from the global north, many people or young people in the underrepresented regions, the global south, people just have access to smartphones, but nobody is really teaching them the key skills that they need to safely use this technology. Who is teaching privacy, surveillance, openness, freedom of expression, hate speech, cyberbullying, cybercrime? Those kind of things are not naturally included in the curriculums in schools. So when we tell young people to go into tech, as they say, or to become more tech savvy, it's not just about knowing how to write code or to use very amazing devices or really, really interesting pieces of technology, AI, blockchain, and the rest. It's also inclusive of understanding the core principles that goes into ensuring that the technology works in a way that is secure, it promotes human rights, it protects digital rights, it's safe, users are safe, people understand how to have a healthy experience on it, how do women use the technology, how do people know how to put themselves outside from making themselves a target? How do smaller minorities ensure that their content is not stolen from them per se? And how basically those kind of little things that may not necessarily be a mainstream topic, but at the end of the day, it boils down to how society and how an everyday user would use the technology. And for us in digital grassroots, this was a very, very large gap that exists towards connecting the next billion, because we can safely assume that the current population or the current margin that has been connected are the ones that have been privileged enough to have access, to have to be able to know these things, or to be able to understand the harms or the ripple effects that can come from this many of our experiences online. But the everyday people from other communities, the traders in the markets, the farmers in the fields, we all want them to use smartphones, but nobody is really teaching them how to be aware of fraud online, how to use it productively and things like that. And most importantly, how to share their voices into processes that make that for developing policy online. So this is something that was very, very pertinent. And I feel that we should, if we really want to evaluate how society can safely adopt technology and to aid their inclusion, these are the other softer issues that we should start looking at. And apart from that, with the latest trends, we have seen how with COVID-19, everyone went online and everyone tried to do online education. For so many people, it was not so easy. For so many other populations, it was not as easy as having access to a smartphone or a laptop that can connect and you get content from all around the world. What is open data? Data is not so open to so many people. So many people do not have the right authorization or authentication to get access to so many resources. Many institutions for higher learning make use of authentication mechanisms that do not exist in the global south. They want you to log in using specific emails that have specific IDs, but not many people have those kind of authentication or authorization to access that kind of data. Therefore, the rippling effect is that some people do not have access to quality content. Some people have access to really, really good content, while others may not have really, really good access to that same kind of content just by virtue of their location. So that is something that can be a bit tricky. And also, I've talked about devices. Sometimes having access to the right kind of device can be a very, very big hindrance to someone who wants to connect and have a very, very good experience for online learning. So many people I've had to deliver a training to somebody and discover that their laptops do not have webcams, and that can be something that it's not so much of a big deal for some other people living in another part of the world, but for some other people, even something like having a webcam on your laptop is something that is it's a necessity. And then even just by virtue of the kind of content that they have access to and things like that, there are so many gaps there that could possibly exist and create a barrier towards for inclusion of some communities. Basically, what targets do we have in Digital Grassroots to address this? This year, we're looking closely to do more online trainings to get everyday people from so many of the underrepresented communities that we work with, to educate them about not just digital skills with regards to being able to have tech skills, but to also enable them to understand all the background work that goes into ensuring that the network works in an open and free way for them to express themselves and be included across all corners. How are they sharing their voices when it comes to global policy development processes, when it comes to technology? That is an area that can be investigated. And then the third question, what do we need? I think I would say it's more funding. And if you follow the trail for where the funding has been going over the years, you realize that some communities get more funding than others because of a vast majority number of issues. So yeah, being able to provide more financial funding for communities that individuals, organizations, governments from the less represented communities would go a long way to helping their inclusion, because of course, you know that with finances, you can afford to get loads of resources that would be useful. And lastly, how can we collaborate as multi-stakeholders to solve this issue? Again, yeah, just create as much space as we can to include those who have less access, understand that the voices that are not being included and can be included, so they need the space for them, and just being conscious of this all the time to make sure that they are in the room is very, very, very useful. And yeah, I think that's it. And yeah, thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you, Ufa. And I was thinking of questions to ask you guys, and I just realized you guys have covered a lot of the questions. You've talked about diverse perspectives. You've talked about marginalized communities. I think the one question that I keep coming back to is, how can we use civic tech to enhance teachers' professional development so that they can support student-centered learning in this digital age that we keep talking about? I don't think we've touched on the teacher side of things. I don't know if there's any other questions you might have gotten from people, but I could throw those in as well. So this is a question for anyone who's keen to take it on.
I could, yeah. One way is so similar. There were multiple topics and issues touched here, but when we talk about professional development, teacher professional development, it's very important to bring about competencies among teachers through digital technology, not through traditional learning. So we have seen cases when even though we're talking about civic tech, we're talking about technology and digital education, we bring teachers together in physical classrooms, and that's not how we should do it. The multiple organizations who work with upgrading teacher skills in digital environment, they need to develop content for teacher development programs online in a digital format. And these can also, as our previous speakers talked about, can also help in reducing costs, because the more content is available online for teacher professional development, and the more teachers around, I would say even around the globe, would have access to similar content. Of course, some programs are more expensive because there are multiple people involved in developing teacher professional programs as well, such as instructional designers, researchers, content experts, all of that. But speaking nation specific, I think governments should invest in developing such programs and just let the scope increase or accelerate around the nation. And I know many countries are doing so. Many countries are developing content for teacher professional development, and that content is being delivered online, which is in a digital format. So you increase digital competence of teachers through digital technology and give civic space to all teachers across the nation if you're talking about a specific.
Thanks, Antigona. And I think we have one question here for Julia. Julia, what would be the potential disadvantages of open source software, especially in the public sector?
And I think I might have answered this question through the chat, but I'm happy to answer here as well. I think a big restraint to the adoption of open source tools by the public sector is that you need to have the proper digital skills in-house to be able to adopt them, implement them, and maintain them. Sometimes it's easier for especially local governments to just buy the service or buy the product ready, even if it is more expensive to the public sector. And I think this is why it's so important to develop the civic sector. So it's better able to help governments on implementing these tools. As I've mentioned during my presentation, adopting open source, the code is free. It's open, you can do whatever you want, but we know that the professionals that are able to do whatever they want with the code are scarce and expensive. So I think Civic Tech has a huge role in just bridging this gap and make sure governments have access to these open source tools that are very valuable, but not a plug and play kind of, it's not a plug and play situation. So I think I've answered the question.
Yeah, so there's a cost and technical capacity element associated with open source software. So it's not all smooth sailing just because it's free. I think that was clear. And I think we have just little time for one more question, and I'm going to throw this to Ufa. I think the work that you're doing is amazing, but it seems you're doing a big job. There's digital education, including for elders as well. There's, you're attacking issues of digital data privacy, how to use digital tools, data security and all of that. How are you managing to do that as one single organization? It's such a big task, and it seems like you work in many countries, and yeah, how are you managing?
Well, that's a really amazing question. So what we do is that we have these cohorts of trainings that we do. And each time when we open a call for application, we select a certain number of participants, largely based on our capacity at that moment. And then through the program, we provide specific themes of issues that would be training on specifically. Main themes, of course, are the more popular issues that we feel would resonate with the community. So even if as part of the application, we ask them, what core issues are you concerned about? And then we use that to know what issues we can support in the program. You see people, most popular issues from our experience are always access and affordability, hate speech, and internet shutdowns. People are always, people from our communities are always looking to learn more about those issues. And then privacy and surveillance can be a bit popular sometimes too. So we get them on board, and then we work towards finding people, trainers on those topics, and industry experts for mentors who can provide mentorship on those topics as well. And yeah, that's it.
Thanks, that was very quick. I don't think we have any more time, and I'm sorry I couldn't come back to Sarah and Carol, but I think we'll have more questions that can be sent to you via email and you can respond. But we'll definitely have you guys again at some point, I imagine. We're always coming back to knock and say, can you come back for another session? So look forward to that. And to everyone else, thank you to our panelists and everyone else who joined us for the session. I'm trying not to take anyone's time because I know people are very busy. And I think a few things that Ma wanted me to mention is we have an upcoming project. We have partnered up with Democracy Lab to bring Hacky New Year, which is an event to bring our member organizations, Code for Africa, Code for Japan, and Code for Africa. So in just 1 week, we will have volunteers from all over the world who contribute their talents to impactful projects. And the event kicks off in Tokyo, shifts to Seattle, then wraps up in Lagos. So join us in person or online on January 28th and February 40th. I think Ma is going to put the details in the chat. So we look forward to that. I think it'll be the first public multi-location hybrid Tech for Good hackathon. So come through, everyone. Ma will share the link. And with that, if you want to learn more, Ma is going to share more links about our community and this series that we've been doing. You can join our Slack channel. You can receive updates from our mailing list. And you can also share feedback from the form that she's sharing in the chat. And that's it. Have a good evening or morning, everyone. This was a great session, and we hope to have more. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.